Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Wendake. This is sent to me by Renegade Game Studios and is designed by Danilo Sabbia. In Wendake, you step into the shoes of the chief of a Native American tribe. You will have to manage the most important aspects of your tribe's daily existence, thereby earning points on the economic, military, ritual, and mask tracks. The core of the game is the action selection mechanism. You will have the opportunity to choose better and better actions over 7 years, and the winner will be the chief who finds the best combinations of actions and uses them to lead their tribe to prosperity. Let me show you how to play. So in Wendake, it's played over 7 rounds, known as years, and each year is divided into 2 phases, which occur in order. The players take turns, one at a time, until everyone has taken 4 turns. On your turn, you must choose one of 2 options. You can either activate an action tile or reserve turn order. After everyone's done their turns, you do a bunch of reset stuff in the restore phase. But first, let's go into player turns. So, on your turn, you can activate an action tile. So looking here, we have 9 action tiles on our board to start. You choose one and place your action marker on it. I'm going to go through all these in detail, but for now, let's say I select this one. Okay, that's movement. I can move 3 of my warriors, or at least 3 movement points. I can move like here, 2, maybe 3, like that. And that's an action. Now, the first tile that you pick can be anywhere, but the other 2 actions you pick on your board must form a line in a single row, column, or diagonal. So, if I pick, let's say, this one next, then my third action has to be this one. If I picked this one, then it has to be this one. So there's that limitation of no matter what, at the end, you got to pick 3 actions in a line. Now, mostly you'll be doing your 3 actions, but another thing you can do at any time. So let's say for my first action, I did this, second action, I did this. For my third action, I decide to reserve my turn order. I go over here, let's say nobody's done it yet, boom. I reserve turn order, that means I will be first next year. At the end of a year, you see where all these turn order tokens have been, and you hand out the correct turn order markers to each player, because it's not just clockwise in this game, it's based on this track here. Then each player will cycle their action tiles. So, what you do, let's say I did these 3 actions during my turn. I flip them over to the other side. Then I slide them all down, and any tiles that are this side up get flipped back to their action side. Then in turn order, each player may set aside one of the 3 tiles here and pick a new advanced action tile to replace it with. So let's say I decide to set aside this tile. Then I could look here and go, ooh, I'll grab this one, because this one has that one plus 2 other actions, so it's just a better version of it. Now, this is in my menu. Then what you do, you take these tiles, you shuffle them up, and you place them at the top. So this will be your new board for next year. At the end of year 3, you'll replace these with even more advanced level 2 tiles. But yeah, as you go through the game, your actions will slowly be swapped out with more advanced actions. After that, you refresh everything else and go to year 2. And that's how you refresh the board. Now, once per game, at any time, you can swap any 2 tiles on your grid. If you do, you return your swap token to the box. If you don't use the swap token, then it's going to be worth 1 point at the end of the game. But yeah, if I use it, I could be like, I need to move these 2. So do something like that. Now let's go through what all these actions do. The canoe action, which I replaced earlier, that lets you put 1 canoe into play in any lake. So you take a canoe and just put it in a lake, doesn't matter where, and now it's on the board. Canoes increase the efficiency of your fishing, military, and trade actions. This action, which I showed earlier, is movement. You move your warriors in any combination a total number of those steps. So if you move them 3 steps, let's say I move them, let's say I'm green, I could go 1, 2, 3, like that. Now, I'm just using the blue board as an example, but I'm going to be using different pieces to illustrate some of these actions. The rules for warrior movement, you can move into any adjacent territory except an opponent's home territory, where they start out. And whenever you enter a territory, you must either decide to place it in a productive area as an outpost or outside of the areas as a guard. If any of your opponent's natives are in the same territory, you may decide to fight. And women and hunters are never moved directly, but they can replace warriors in productive areas. So I'll get into sort of like how the combat works a little bit later. Another action you can do is harvest. Each productive area where you have a woman, so let's say I'm the red player, and I have one here and one here. You look at the vegetables that those regions can produce, in this case, corn, and beans, and you simply get one of each. The hunting action lets you gain one beaver token for each productive area where you have a hunter. So similar to the women, you look on the board and you see where all your hunters are. Let's say I'm a yellow player. I got one here and here. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3. I get 3 beaver tokens. Another action is tanning. So if I tan, I take all my beaver tokens I have and I turn them into pelts. The fishing action lets you, for every canoe you have on the board, you get a fish. So if I'm blue player, I got 2 canoes on the map, I get 2 fish. Now let's go into some of the more complex actions. This action here is military. Now if it has more than one action on it, you do them from top to bottom. But military, first you may claim turtle tiles. So what you do is you look over at the turtles here. They give you prizes depending on how many either women, hunters, or canoes you have on the board. So if I have 3 women on the board, I can grab a turtle tile with that number. On the back is a secret point value. We'll get into that later. Now, if I have eligibility in more than one category, now, so I couldn't, if I had 4 women, I couldn't grab both of these. But what I could do, let's say I had 3 women, 3 hunters, and 4 canoes, I could grab one of each in one action. Because they're in different categories. Then, after you take your turtle tiles, the second part of the military action is you count how many regions you have the most guards. Blue currently has 1, 2, 3. 3 different regions where they have the most. So, that means they get 3 military points. You mark that on the track. At the start of the game, 2 different scoring tracks are randomly placed in pairs. I'll explain why later. Another action is the mask ceremony. So first, you draw a mask card. You take a look at it. You can either draw the top card from the top of the deck or the top card in the discard pile. But either way, then if you may play a combination of mask cards that matches an empty space in the mask area. So with 1 card, you wouldn't be able to do anything. But let's say I had 2 cards. Let's say I had these 2. These are both 2 different masks, so I could put my marker on the one that marks 2 different masks. In that case, I would get 1 point in the mask track. The more different ones so if I have like 4 of a kind, or 4 different kinds, I mean, the 4 of a kind would be here. There's all different variations, like 3 different masks, 3 of the same. You can put your disc on there. If someone else has their disc on there though already, you are blocked and cannot do that same configuration. The masks that you played are not discarded. They stay in front of you face up. You'll actually get them back at the end of the year. Trading is a 3-step action. They can all each be performed once, but none of them are mandatory. First, you may exchange resources with the supply. You can exchange 1 for each canoe you have in play. So you could be like, okay, I got 2 canoes. I'm going to exchange 2 pumpkins. I want 2 fish instead. That's the first thing you do. However, if you do an exchange, then you have to reveal the top card of the mask deck. So let's do that. So top card. There's a skull. That means you got smallpox. You discard that card, and one of your face-up natives has to get removed from the board. So let's say I pick this one and return them to my longhouse. If it was blank, nothing would happen. The second part you can do in a trade is you can buy a progress tile. Progress tiles are over here, and they all do different things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they can do stuff like, have discounts on stuff, or you can do a free movement action, or, they all have different powers on them. And they cost different things. So like a level 1 progress tile it costs 1 beaver pelt, 1 fish, and 1 vegetable. So if I had those resources, I could spend them and I could get a progress tile. So I could get, let's say, this one, which gives me a free 1 movement action I can activate once per year. Whenever you use one, you just flip it over. Now the thing is, when you buy a progress tile, you also progress on some of these tracks. So for example, it shows on the top here, you get 1 point for trading and 1 point for military. So you would get, if let's say it was red player, they would get 1, and they would get 1. And the final thing you can do if you want is buy economic points. You can spend up to 5 different resources of your choice and return them to the supply, and then you would score that many points. So let's say I go, I'm going to spend a pumpkin and a fish. You throw them away, you can get 2 economic points and progress further on the track. Another action you can do is Sacred Fire. What Sacred Fire does is when you select this, you can activate any other action tile except the 2 in the row you've already activated or wish to activate. So let's say I had and I activate this. So I can't use Sacred Fire to activate this one because it's going to be activated anyway, but I could use it to activate any of the other ones. If you do that, you place your Sacred Fire token on the tile that you activated. So let's say I did this one, you mark it. This one doesn't get flipped during the refresh phase. And the final action is Ritual. So when you use an action, it turns to this side. And this is actually still an action. To do this, it's called Ritual. You move any 2 natives of your choice from your longhouse to your home territory. So this is how you get more reinforcements. So you take them and put them in your home territory up like so. Then you score ritual points equal to the least common type of native in your home territory. So right now, I have 4 warriors. I have, looks like, 5 women and 5 hunters. In that case, actually, yeah, 4 is the smallest group I have, 4 warriors, so I would get 4 ritual points. So that's how you can get more people if they're, if they are sent to your longhouse through combat or sickness. And it's also one of the scoring tracks, which is important. Now let's go back to movement, because movement is a little complicated. So whenever a warrior goes into an area, you have 2 ways you can position them. You can lay them inside and in one of these squares as an outpost. During your turn, you can replace them with, so let's say I'm going to swap this out. I can put a hunter here. Another way you can put them is as a guard, standing outside, and that way they are protecting your productive areas. If you want to fight someone, let's say red's here and they have a woman here. If I send 2 people over to that region, whenever I fight an opponent's guard, both guards get sent to the player's longhouses. They just cancel each other out. They're dead. And then you can attack a native in a productive area. So this second hunter could fight this woman, and she is removed and returned to the opponent's longhouse. And then that warrior is placed in there as an outpost, and then you could replace it with one of your women. If, let's say there were 3 guards here and a woman, you have to defeat all the guards first before you can go for the productive areas. Now, at the end of the game, you add up your score, but scoring is very unique in this game. You look at each pair of score tracks. So let's say at the end of the game I had, let's say, 11 of military and 7 of mask. You look at the lower score of the pair, and that's what you score. So I would score 7, and if I looked up here and I had, let's say, 16 blue, but I only had 5 in the economic track, I just score 5 points. These don't do anything. So in the game, you want to have these both as even as possible because you're going to score the lower of the pair for the 2 pairs. So at the end of the game, everyone flips over their turtles and they score points for them. So like, let's say I flip over this, I could get 2 more points on military. So everyone does that, and then they shift all their pieces to the correct scores. Then the scoring is unique here in that you look at each pair and you pick the lower score. So let's say I had, at the final score for blue, 11 for mask and 13 for military. Since these two are paired together, I have to get the lower score, 11. Same thing for up here. With economic and ritual, let's say I had like 20 of these, but only 5 of these. This won't do anything because I have to pick the lower one. So I only get 5 points. So in this game, it's very important to keep your scores as even as possible because you're only going to score the lower score in each pair. Otherwise, you also get points for your swap token if you didn't use it. But then, yeah, that's it. You add up those points and see who the winner is. Now, at the start of the game, you can either have everyone be the same and start with the same number of resources, or they can have character powers depending on their tribe. So as you can see, they each start with different numbers of resources at the beginning. But here, the Cayuga, you can take the Cayuga token and put it in your longhouse. When you are attacked by your opponent's warriors, your women go back to your home territory, not back to your longhouse, which is useful. Fox, when you perform the trade action, you may buy 2 progress tiles instead of 1. The Mohawk, you start the game with the Mohawk warrior, in addition to your other warriors. If you fight an opponent's warrior, this warrior returns to your home territory, not your longhouse. The Ojibwa, during setup, replace one of your action markers with the black action marker. When you use this each year, you may immediately use another action marker before the next player takes their turn. So you're gonna get like a double turn in a row. Oneida, you start the game with a level 1 or level 2 progress tile, which you choose from among those not selected during setup. You don't get points for it, but you do get that special ability just from the start of the game, which is pretty cool. Onondaga, you start with 6 natives of each type in your home territory instead of 5. Ottawa, your Sacred Fire is never flipped to the ritual side. Ooh, that's pretty good. Seneca, you start the game with 2 swap tokens, and each one is worth 1 point at the end of the game. The Shawnee, you start the game with only 4 warriors in your territory, but you need 1 less woman, hunter, or canoe to claim turtle tiles, so those turtle tiles will be way easier to get. Tuscarora, leave your hunters gray side up even when they are in play. If your hunter is attacked by an opponent's warrior, the attacking warrior is injured and must be returned to your opponent's longhouse. Ooh. Those are the tribe abilities. And then I'll show you a little, like maybe a handful of like what these progress tiles and some of the advanced abilities can look like. So this one here is a level 1 power. Whenever you do the mask ceremony action, you can place your disc on a space that already is occupied. So it lets you give you a little power. For this one, at any point during your turn, you may spend up to 3 different vegetable resources to score an equal number of points on any track. So just a way to get some points. On this one, whenever you do the mask ceremony action, you may score as if you had 1 extra mask card in your hand. And finally, if we see like some of the advanced ones here for the advanced actions, this one, it lets you do your tanning action and do a economic action and do 3 movement all in one go. So in the beginning, your actions are pretty simple, but once you activate these 3 ones, you're doing basically 3 actions per tile for each marker. So otherwise, that's pretty much it. You're just competing to make sure you raise points on all the tracks, and you score the lower of each, and each track is scored in different ways, and that's pretty much the game. So this was solid. I like the theme. I also am fond of the scoring system that requires you to be good in all fields since you're only scoring the lower of the 2 halves. It reminds me of like Tigris and Euphrates in that way, which also has a scoring system I enjoy. The way your actions get switched in with better actions is very satisfying. What you can do on your turns really starts ramping up. In the beginning, it feels like, oh, what, just 3 actions? But then it's like, oh no, that's really kind of like 9 actions if you play it right. The special tiles give you a lot of fun combos you can pull off. Some people may be turned off by the fact that it kind of feels like you're playing 4 separate mini games and just kind of juggling them. And in some games, yeah, that can kind of bother me, but I didn't mind it in this one. I'm not so sure how successful the whole like flip the tiles over when you use the mechanic is, though. It ended up being kind of more tedious, I thought, than strategic. But the whole using actions in a line idea, I did like that a lot. It felt like the flipping, I felt like it was just like you're constantly taking away these cool actions and replacing them with, you know, the same action, you know, like the ritual action. It felt counterintuitive. And yeah, I understand you're supposed to work your way around it. I just found it a little annoying. I found myself more often just going with new horizontal rows of, okay, well, I'm just going to make sure I always get good turns by making my switched in tiles the horizontal row every time, and I actually did pretty well just doing that. And then the action swapping became very essential for me. Overall, though, I had a good time. Like I said, I think the theme is something that isn't usually done a lot in games, which is cool. The scoring system was fun, and the action upgrading were my favorite parts. And it's all packaged really well together. So yeah, I would recommend this. It's fun. It's a might feel a little disconnected in terms of what you're doing, but I thought all the different parts were fun.